One of the biggest concerns and misconceptions among expats and foreigners is that the currency their investments are listed in on their statements actually matters. Spoiler, it doesn't. Let's explore why that is. While cash and cash-like savings do have currency risk, investments in the world's greatest companies, the name I prefer to call stocks, does not. And that is because it doesn't matter at all what currency you use to buy, or to sell for that matter, any stock with. Let's take a look at an example to explain. First, let's look at two identical exchange-traded funds, or ETFs for short, that invest in exactly the same basket of the world's greatest companies, from the same investment company, and that are managed by the same person. The only difference between these two ETFs is where they are registered and the currency that they are reported in. The first ETF from a large, respected investment company called iShares is IEUR, or the iShares Core Europe ETF. This large, well-known ETF is listed on the New York Stock Exchange, trades in US dollars, and invests in a diversified portfolio of European stocks. The second ETF, also from iShares, is IMEA, and is also called the iShares Core Europe ETF. This fund is identical to the first ETF and invests in the same exact diversified portfolio of European stocks as its US-based counterpart, IEUR. The only difference is that this ETF is listed on the London Stock Exchange and is traded in euros. So, does it make a real difference which one you purchase as an investment? Not at all. No matter what currency you use, let's see this in action. Let's assume an American living in Europe has 100,000 euros to invest, and not sure if they should invest the euros into IMEA or convert their money into US dollars and invest in IEUR. They are worried about the exchange rate and the possibility of the US dollar going down in value over time as well. This makes them nervous to convert their euros to US dollars and invest in the US fund. Let's see why this shouldn't be a concern for this investor, who should invest in the US fund anyway for better tax treatment. If this investor had decided to stick with euros and invest in IMEA at the beginning of 2019, you can see on the chart how that investment would have played out for them by September 2020. Their 100,000 euros would have grown to 112,676 euros, which would have been a 12.7% growth. Not bad. Now, had this investor decided to exchange his 100,000 euros into US dollar at the beginning of 2019 and purchase the US-based fund, IEUR, instead, you can see that the 100,000 euros would have become $114,885, with an exchange rate of 1.14 on the 1st of January 2019. So at the beginning of 2019, 100,000 euros and 114,885 US dollars had the exact same value. Now, at the end of the same investment period, 20 months, you can see that IEUR grew to $134,518, which is a 17.1% return. And here's where people usually think, see, what currency you invest does matter. The USD fund earned more than the Euro fund, but they didn't really. Let's see why. The exchange rate between the US dollar and the euro changed over that 20 months. And when the time came to sell the investment in US dollar on September 1st, 2020, and convert it back to euros, you can see that the exchange rate is now 1.19. This means that when the investor exchanges 134,000 US dollars back into euros, he got exactly 112,676 euros. That's exactly what he would have gotten if he had invested in the Euro ETF. It didn't matter which currency he invested in, because in the real world, he got exactly the same result in either currency when exchanging it. Why is that? Well, I like to describe it like this. Let's think of a company or an ETF like a small tree. That tree is exactly how tall the tree is today. It doesn't matter today if you measure the tree in centimeters or inches. The tree isn't taller in one measurement system. It's just as tall as it is today. Now let's assume the tree has grown some over time, and that's great, but the tree is still as tall as it is. You can measure that tree again now with inches or centimeters. And maybe the relationship of centimeters to inches has changed over time, like currencies do. But the tree is still the same height or size that it has grown to, no matter how you measure it. Think of currencies as a measuring tool. It doesn't matter what currency you measure with, a company is worth what a company is worth. Like a tree is as tall as a tree is. A company isn't worth more in one currency over another, just like the tree isn't taller measured in centimeters over inches. When you own an investment like one of the world's greatest companies, or a lot of them in a high-quality, well-diversified portfolio, don't get caught up in the trap of thinking that you own that investment in any one currency. An investment isn't owned in a currency, it's just owned. And you can measure it at any time in any currency. Just like you can measure your tree at any time with any measurement system you like. It still is just as tall as it is, and growing hopefully. If you have more questions about this or would like to dive a bit deeper, just let me know and I'd be happy to chat with you about it. In the meantime, don't worry about what currency the world's greatest companies you own are measured in, because it doesn't matter.